Time for the Tesla and the Palantir weekly and monthly update. It was a monthly candle close, and I'm just going to show you the monthly chart really quickly here. You can see it didn't close the month above the 382, but it did wick through a lot of levels there. But I'm going to first just show you the weekly chart, just so you can see what really happened throughout this week, right? You can see that it got rejected by the 382, came back down. Now I'm going to put on the Ichimoku and show you some things here. And you can see that it did wick down to the baseline a little bit through it yesterday, and it closed right basically below the cloud. But here's the thing that we need to pay attention to. That price did, in fact, close here, 214.11, right? That is above the 213 that I showed you, and I'll show you why that's important in a second. But first, next week, where is the candle going to open? Well, it's going to open in the cloud. So that's going to leave room to do whatever it wants. It can go back down and retest levels. It can go back up to retest the resistance up here. It can just be in a longer range. But being back in the cloud on a week-to-week basis, I think that's a really, really good thing, right? And essentially, what I'm looking at for that 213 level is right here on the monthly chart. And you can see that level is exactly right there at the bottom of the cloud, around 213.22. And that is the reason why I said price needs to close above it today, and why I think it's going to, because market makers need it to remain really bullish. Why? Because that'll be the second consecutive month in a row that it closed within the cloud, and also a breakout above the baseline and the conversion line. What this ultimately means is I think this is signaling the very beginning of the bull market for Tesla. Even though it hasn't really made a higher high yet, from these levels up here, it's still the first time that the baseline and the conversion line have been so close together in a long time, offering really good support. And it's the first time for two consecutive monthly closes back in the cloud while being above those two indicators right there. So this to me is signaling something super bullish. Even though it didn't close above that 221.26, that's okay. This is still looking very, very bullish for the beginning of something beautiful. And I'm really happy to see that the market makers were able to push it back above the 213 zone that I was forecasting. So that is amazing, right? So now let's go check out the GAN on linear scale to see more confluence here. So here is the GAN on linear scale, and look at what happened with the arc as well. It basically closed the weekly candle right on that arc, trying to flip it back to a support for the second week in a row. So this is also a beautiful setup for maybe price next week to open back above the cloud, or sorry, back above the arc, and would leave room to go back up to the blue angle above around 230. So this is still the zone that I think price can trade in. Sure, it can wick through again and go down and test lower levels, but that's no big deal. As long as weekly candles and monthly candles continue to close above levels, it can do whatever it wants on a day-to-day basis, right? Which you saw today. Actually, you saw the whole week today. It was just like price was pushing down towards support basically the whole week, the whole week, the whole week. And then what do you know? Friday, the last couple hours, they just decided to push it up. And that's because of the reasons I just showed you on the monthly Ichimoku. So now let's go check out the angles chart right here that I have set up for Tesla. Let me just take off this Ichimoku here. And what do we see here? Well, we see that price once again closed another week above that blue angle sloping down, which is even more confluence that 209, 208 zone was a perfect support. It did wick through it, but who cares? It closed well above. What does that mean? The next week will open around here, and it will leave room to come back down to those 207, 208 levels if it wants to. But it also leaves room to go up as well because there's no more resistance above on these angles. But other indicators, there's still resistance above. And lastly, one thing I wanted to show you was the GAN on log scale, the original one that I've showed you before, and that was this one right here. And you can see what it really looked like throughout the week, right? This red candle almost went down back to touch the blue level right there to kind of confirm that zone as a support, right? You can see it broke out and a successful back test, even a wick below, right? And now it's building a base on top of my blue level here, which going in the past, you can see how important that blue level is, right? So essentially what's really developing now, it's, in my opinion, Tesla is building a new base for its next explosive move. So what I recommend to you guys, just ignore the day-to-day moves. focus on the weekly candle closes, focus on the monthly candle closes, because the way this just ended up this month is very, very bullish for the future. And I think it's time to get excited for Tesla and for a lot of other stocks too. But now let's go check out Palantir. So now I have Palantir here pulled up on linear scale. And what did this week bring for Palantir? Well, if you zoom in here, you can see Palantir clearly went back and retested the 618 on linear scale, the 3008, and that support held. So you remember I was talking about how I think price could get down to 29 and or maybe 28 or maybe even 27. I still think that's possible, but it's not going to happen if this 618 holds as a support, which is a high probability, right? It really is, because this is a very important level. The 618 fib is very important. So if this continues to hold week after week, it could slowly build a new base to continue higher. So we have to understand that, right? Now, when I overlap that with the GAN on linear scale, we can just put that together and see what's really happening. I'm going to zoom in for you. What's happening with the GAN on linear is it's holding this angle, but it's below this arc. So it's in a range, and it already got rejected by the blue level up above. So this is really a tight range for Palantir. We'll see how next week opens and finishes, right? If it finishes back above the arc, then there is a potential to continue higher. If next week closes below that arc, then there's a potential to come back and retest levels. So I think this arc is really telling a story right there around 3180 to see if it can close the following week above it or not. So we're going to keep an eye on that linear scale level. And that being said, now it's time to put on the Ichimoku just to see where it closed the week and the month. And the reason why I say it's possible to go back to 27s is because the baseline and the conversion line are at 26 and 27 respectively, right? So that is the possibility to go back down there and retest levels if this 618 breaks. So we're going to keep an eye on that as support. If it never breaks on a weekly candle close, then maybe this will not happen, right? So got to pay attention to everything one step at a time, right? If the first step never breaks, then don't expect any lower. But if it holds, but if it does break, I mean, then I would expect a little bit lower. So we're gonna watch that very closely, and then going to the monthly candle right here, you can see that the monthly candle closed really, really bullish too, right? If you look at it, well above that blue conversion line right there at 24.39, well above the baseline, above everything, right? A really bullish Ichimoku on the monthly chart. So nothing to fear there. The only thing we got to watch is that 3180 level of the arc, and also the 618 to hold as support to confirm continue strength, to confirm that price does in fact want to go higher. And lastly, I'm going to show you just Palantir on log scale here, just to show you that angle that I've been talking about for a while. So it's still resistance, right? So we're not even going to worry about it anymore, because the next week's going to open up here. And that means the top of that angle does sit around 33.70, maybe even $34. So I'm not sure if it's going to get there, but I'm going to just consider this angle going to be resistance for a long time now, if not forever, right? Price could just slowly drift this way over time and just forget about this angle forever. So that's no big deal, right? It's okay, because that's what happens over time. You can see it happen to this angle. This was resistance, then it never touched it again. Then this angle was lost as a support, then it never touched it again. So it's just what happens over time with charts. Once an angle is lost as a support, sometimes it's resistance forever. And that's okay, because time goes on and these angles go on for infinity. So it's okay, right? It doesn't really matter. But essentially, this is still a very bullish chart. Just got to pay attention to that 618 Fibonacci level around 30 bucks as support. And I think nothing else really matters, right? As long as that support holds, then probably price will not go any lower. But the way the month closed for a lot of stocks is really, really bullish. And it's going to be on my Patreon about the whole stock market, like everything, really. So if you guys want to see all my opinions on all the stocks out there that are the most popular, then go ahead and sign up for my Patreon, and I'll link it in the description below, so you guys can check it out if you are interested. But yeah, don't be disappointed by anything. The way the market closed today is fantastic, and I'll see you guys next week, and have a happy Labor Day.